worked on Masters of the Universe, and
Let's
then
just
the other guy worked on League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
this is a cold open, folks. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on tonight's Salty Nerd Podcast
You need to
late
warn me
night.
when we're starting. Don't just start, Alex.
You do that to me
I
all
could
the
be picking my
time.
nose.
You do that to me all the time when we were on the set.
That's different. We edit that stuff. I feel like
Welcome
Bill
everybody.
O'Reilly right now. Screw it. We'll do it live.
I'm just waiting. Yeah, well, kind of. That's what I said. Oh no, we just lost Tom. What the heck happened?
Tom was
Oh my
sickened by
God.
your unprofessionalism,
I
and so
guess.
he left.
Screw it. Welcome everybody. All right, guys. Tonight we are going to be breaking down the new Amazon Prime series Reacher, season one, the whole season, episodes 1 through I think 8. And it's gonna be full spoilers. We're gonna break down each and every episode, talk about the story points and the mystery within. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it first, and then you can come back.
Don't
and check
watch
this.
This. We're going to be spoiling the crap out of it.
We're gonna be spoiling
Also,
the crap
props
out of it.
to Amazon for finally doing a binge series. Like they actually released all the episodes at once, so we could enjoy them instead of doing the stupid week-to-week thing.
Do you think they didn't expect this to be a hit? Is that why they did that? They were just like, just throw it out there.
You know, it's kind of funny because we actually have an article up on saltynerd.com about why they did it. And it was basically they tested out the binge model, essentially. And it was like one of the most successful launches of a series they've ever had. And that's because people just wanted to be able to watch the whole thing, you know?
Yeah. I watched it. I think it took me 2 days to watch the whole thing. But the only reason why I did that, I think, is because I knew I was going to be talking about it on tonight's show. So I was like, I need to be able to watch it, which I am glad that I was able to watch the entire season. But typically, my opinion is the week by week is a better experience for people and to like build anticipation and stuff like that. But you're just like into it. You love that binging stuff.
I disagree. I think binge is the best viewer choice, but week to week is the best YouTube choice because it gives us time to
do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, to do this type of stuff. Exactly.
Episode by episode. All right, guys, before we dive into this show, I just want to remind you that if you'd like to support this podcast, go to saltynerdclub.com and become a club member. You're going to get access to a ton of extra content. It's only $5 a month, and you get 4 exclusive podcasts every single month dedicated to classic sci-fi. Last month we did Doctor Who. This month we're doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and March is going to be all about Eureka. And who knows what we might do next. Sorry, I'm drinking wine already, and I'm stumbling over my words. Who knows what we might do next. So join the club membership and help support the podcast and get some really good content in return. All right, so tonight's show is going to be all about Reacher Season 1. And welcome to the people in the chat. Fluffy Panda, how you doing? Says, I read the book too, and I was shocked how faithful it was. All right, well, we're going to get into it. Kadish has some things to say about these books. So first off, I wanted to talk about there's a few flashbacks throughout the entire show over the eight episodes. And I felt like if we kind of like threw them in the middle of an episode recap, it would be a little bit out of place. So we're going to take care of the flashbacks first. And it's going to give us a little bit of a backstory on Reacher's character, the type of person he is. We can kind of discuss that, get that out of the way, and then we can dive into the full show. So the first flashbacks, it says, these involve establishing Jack Reacher's backstory and character traits. Some flashbacks involve him protecting a small town while overseas in Afghanistan. And he brought his brand of martial law over there by killing a bunch of people who were abusing young children. And it ended him up in some trouble as far as the military goes, but because of his rank and his reputation, he kind of got off on that. He didn't get in as much trouble as you might think. So that kind of establishes that he's been this type of character for a long time. He had a run-in. He was working overseas in Afghanistan with the military, and he's been a military police for a long time. Another set of flashbacks involved Jack and his brother Joe as children. Joe was his big brother and told him his brother's fight was his fight. There was a group of kids that he moved into this, I believe it was a town in Hawaii, and there's this group of bullies that were bullying this young kid who I believe had some form of autism or something like that. They were making fun of him and teasing him and stuff like that. And Reacher, something just clicked in his head, and he needed to make things right. And he went and beat the crap out of this one bully, who ended up being a general's son. And the repercussions of that were that the general took a little bit of a vindictive play and ended up forcing Reacher's whole family to move away from Hawaii and go to some like hole in the wall place in Germany for a new I don't know what
Assignment.
a new assignment. Thank you. So that kind of establishes again that Reacher's has this long time like really hardcore vigilante justice side to him. And in the final flashback, Reacher says goodbye to his mother, who is dying, and showing a rare moment of vulnerability. Him and his brother have to deal with the death of his mother. And it shows a little bit about him and his brother Joe and their relationship together. Joe is very much the compass that Reacher kind of follows throughout his entire life. And he's kind of like his brick wall. What did you guys think about these little flashbacks and his character within them? Go ahead, Kadish.
So first of all, I want to say that this series is one of those rare instances where the adaptation is better than the source material. I read the book The Killing Floor a long time ago after I saw the first Tom Cruise movie because I liked the movie, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to go check out the books. And unfortunately, the books, in my humble opinion, are very poorly written books. Don't like them at all. And the flashbacks that you just went over is one of those additions to the series that was not in the books. You never get any backstory on Jack Reacher, really, especially the stuff with his brother. Like when you read the book and you find out that his brother is the guy that got murdered, that's pretty much all you find out about the brother. It's like, oh, he was this Gary Stu Secret Service agent who's tracking down counterfeiters, and he died. And that's pretty much all the backstory you got. In the show, they actually flesh out, who the brother was and kind of like what he meant to Reacher, and also the backstory about Reacher punishing the pedophiles in Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever he was. That was not in the books either, at least not in the book I read.
Okay.
Might have been pulled from some other book in like the Billion book series at some point. But if you just read The Killing Floor, you don't get any background on Reacher whatsoever. And if you do, it's very thin. So I felt like these flashbacks were actually a good addition to the show because they actually made you care about the relationship that Reacher had with his brother and explained why he would want to, avenge his brother's death and all this other stuff. Although I did think it was kind of weird that, he kept saying like, I wasn't close with my brother. And yet,
all these like flashbacks are showing him being very close to his brother.
And he was still motivated to try to, avenge his brother. So like it would have been nice if they had shown like a little bit of humanity from Reacher in the show. But, what I thought was pretty good. So.
Right on. Tom, what did you think about these flashbacks and characters or his Reacher's character development here?
I think the character development in the show generally wasn't very good. I'm going to put that on acting chops or whatnot. But I am interested. The only reference I have is the Tom Cruise movies, which I did like. So a lot of the comparison I did was to the movies. But Matt, you read some of the books. What time frame do the books take place in? Is it the same time frame, or is this like a Vietnam thing in the original book series, or is it pretty reliable that he was like a Gulf War vet or something?
No, it was like Gulf War time frame. Like I think the first book came out in the early 90s or mid 90s or something like that. So okay. It's modern day. It's not like it's not like Rambo where he's coming back from Vietnam or like whatever.
The haunted John Rambo. But the backstory is good. I mean, you need these sorts of things to kind of set the foundation of. I guess Jack Reacher always does the right thing, no matter what it means.
Yeah.
To himself or to other people around him, he'll always do the right thing. So I in that aspect, okay, it softens it up a little bit. Okay, it lets you kind of know where he comes from. Okay, that's fine. Do I think those scenes drag? Yeah, they do. They if they weren't in there, would it change it? No, it wouldn't change it even a little bit. But it's good to see. it gives you a more human side of the this big Terminator that is Jack Reacher. What 6'4", 250, which
The
I think
dude's a hunk.
which they say in every single episode.
Yeah.
What are
They
you,
have to-
6'4", 250?
Yeah,
They have to
and
make a
that's
comment.
accurate to the books too. Like
Yeah.
the Jack Reacher in the books was like this mountain of a man,
Mhm.
and when Tom Cruise got cast in the movies, all the book fans were just like, "That's not Jack Reacher." One thing that did annoy me though was how his mother would always call him by his last name. Like that made no sense at all. It'd be like my
It doesn't
mom
make any sense
calling
at
me
all.
Kadish, It's like, "Hey Kadish, how you doing? Hey mom." No, just
No, it
especially
was
like if you
weird.
have,
Everybody
especially if
called
you
him
have
Kadish.
siblings. Yeah,
I don't
it's
know.
weird.
It's a strange thing, but it wasn't important enough for me to really care about. It was just like one of those weird, like, okay, I guess his mom is a strange person. Speaking of people that you care very much about, I have to give a shout out to my wife because I absentmindedly told her that I would take her out on a date tonight because I forgot that I do a live stream on Monday nights. And then when it hit me that I'm like, oh crap, I scheduled this live stream and we're talking about this freaking show, and I'm like, babe, I'm not gonna be able to take you on a date. So I owe my wife a date, and you guys owe her a round of applause in the chats. My wonderful wife, very supportive of me, is very, very nice.
You
and said,
chose
yeah,
Jack Reacher over
go,
Ashley.
go do your show, you big goober. All right. Oh man. All right. So the first episode, let's dive right into it. The first episode is called "Welcome to Mawgrave." Reacher arrives in a small town of Mawgrave. He's about to sit down to a piece of peach pie when two officers rush in, guns drawn. Refusing to speak, he is held until Detective Finley questions him about a local murder. During the investigation, a local named Hubble admits to the murder, but his confession oddly does not match the facts of the case. Hubble and Reacher end up being sent to a county lockup until the investigation can be completed. In prison, Hubble and Reacher get put in general population against the orders of Detective Finley, putting them in danger of an apparent assassination attempt. Don't worry, though, because Reacher is a complete badass and takes care of things. After being released due to his alibi clearing his name, Reacher gets involved in the investigation and discovers the victim of the murder was, in fact, his very own brother. Dun, dun, dun. Great first episode. As somebody, I've never read the books. I think I watched the Tom Cruise movie once. Not a really big fan. I don't know anything about the source material. This first episode was a lot of fun. I really like the actor that they got to play Reacher. I think he's a really great cast. I love his like deadpan sense of humor, his very just raw sarcasm. It goes well against Detective Finley, who's kind of like this uptight, by the books kind of guy. So I really enjoyed that, and the fight scenes in this show. I think we've talked about this already, but the freaking fight scenes in this show are really good. Like they are a great seasoning to this show because you'll be going along, it's kind of getting a little bit dry. They're doing this investigation, looking for clues, doing a little Sherlock Holmes type things, and then like right in the middle of it, it'll just be like absolute brutal murder and mayhem, and it's like, oh, okay, it kind of perks up the episode a little bit, and they do that quite often. So this first episode was a lot of fun, and it got me hooked. And I was kind of on board from episode 1 on. Kadish, what did you think about this first episode as a starter for the story?
It was a good, solid first episode. I think it hit all the right notes. It gave you the action, introduced all the characters, and ended on a cliffhanger that I think really worked very well. Comparing it to the books, so I got to talk about the source material.
I know you're just chomping at the bit for this, so go ahead.
Yeah. So, like I said before, this is a instance where the adaptation is better than the source material, in my opinion. I do not think Lee Childs is a very good writer. If people like reading his stuff, more power to them. Me personally, like as a writer myself and as an author, I was stunned at how poor the writing was in these Jack Reacher novels. In addition to that, Jack Reacher is a Gary Stu, just flat out, like the male version of a Mary Sue. He is perfect in every way, shape, and form. No one can ever hope to beat him in a fight. No one can ever hope to outthink him. He is just perfect in every sense of the word, and he's never challenged. Like, you're never worried that Jack Reacher isn't going to accomplish what he sets out to accomplish. So I do think Alan Ritchson was a good casting choice. Like, he embodies the character much like the character is written. I don't think he's a very good actor, but he gets the point across. Malcolm Goodwin, who plays Detective Finley, I've seen him in lots of stuff before. I've always liked him as an actor. One of the great things that he brings to the role is, in the book, Finley's basically Reacher's bitch, essentially. Like, he just does whatever Reacher tells him to do. And Goodwin kind of brought a lot of character to the role of Finley, made him, kind of like, cursing isn't really his thing. He doesn't like to curse. He doesn't like to eat unhealthily, all this other stuff. So, like, that's stuff that was not in the books. Like, that's stuff that they brought to that character to make him more of a kind of a foil to Reacher, I guess.
Okay.
And then the character.
So he's a recurring character in the book?
He's just in the first book.
Is the first book.
So the other character, Roscoe, the love interest / female deputy. So in the books, she's just there to be on Reacher's dick. Like, the minute that she books him into jail for murder, she wants to have sex with him. Like, she's only there because she's like, oh, Reacher's so irresistible. Even though I think he's a killer, I want to have sex with this guy. That's in the books. The character of Roscoe in the show is so much better than she was in the books. Like they actually gave her, like, strength and character and agency and stuff like that. Like, she wasn't someone.
Yeah, I was
like, she wasn't someone who needed Reacher. Like she could stand on her own 2 feet. She was very assertive. So, like, her character in the show was light years better than what it was in the book. And the show follows the broad plot points of the books very closely. Like, all the main things that happen in the book kind of happen in the show, but the show starts adding in these little twists as the series goes on that makes it far more interesting. And they also kind of embellish some of the minor characters a little bit more, like Guillermo, the corner guy. Yeah, like he's basically not in the books. Like, they just added him for the series and they made him cool.
He's a nice little comic relief for this show.
Yeah. So overall,
you know what bothers me the most about that?
It's terrible. Overall, terrible, but the show was good.
Okay. All right. Well, Kay just gave his overall thoughts for the whole series, so he can go now.
Yeah. See you guys.
See you later. It'll be me and Tom now.
So off of what Matt just said, did it not bother anybody more that nobody mentioned that it was Guillermo from what we do in the shadows? Because I was like, is that Guillermo? What I do in the shadows?
It's Guillermo. Bro, you got some stuff going on over there.
Yeah, we didn't get one reference, like no vampire joke, no nothing. I mean, that's Guillermo. Funny stuff.
Chat's asking if you're getting a room service, Tom.
Yeah, you getting room service? You have a ghost in the background? Something's going on over there.
Well, it's midnight where I'm at, so like we're like as opposed to Alex, we did have a date tonight, and we're cleaning up a little bit. And I even mentioned to Alex, like, "Hey man, it's Valentine's night, right?" And he's like, "Eh."
That's just
Alex doesn't believe in love. Okay,
I don't believe in that nonsense.
But for the first episode, I think it sets the tone for the whole series, where it is kind of dry and drawn out, and you're kind of getting long periods of like the weakest Sherlock Holmes you've ever seen. But they do pepper in awesome violence. It reminds me of the 80s where you saw some big badass muscle guy, beat the shit out of a room of guys. We were talking before we started. I'm sick and tired of seeing Charlize Theron beating the shit out of 13 dudes in a room. It's nice to see a guy who I think could possibly beat up 6 dudes in a prison bathroom, pull it off. And the choreography played it off as well. I saw an interview with him right before the show started, and he really, really kissed Tom Cruise's ass the whole interview because he's kind of taken the mantle on. And he says, as an homage, he's doing all of his own stunts. So all those jumps over cars and leaps over fences and all the fighting and all that, it's really him doing everything.
I think that's also because they couldn't find a stunt double that looked just like him.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that guy is huge.
Tom, you
he's a monster.
You said something interesting that I want to bring up again, is like that 90s action hero feel. And I think that's one of the
he
biggest...
said 80s action.
I'm sorry, 80s. That's one of the
80s
biggest...
to 90s, that range, yeah.
It's in there.
The Schwarzenegger, the Stallones, the Van Damme, that muscly, badass guy. I miss that. I miss that.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest selling points for this show for me. It was just how it felt like a classic 80s to 90s action movie at some points. And I was like, I missed that. I'm with you. Like, I love seeing this freaking huge mountain of a dude do things that I'm like, yeah, he could probably do that. Anyway, I want to address the chat real quick. A $20 super chat from Gosso, Patreon of the podcast. In an investigation, details matter, Salty. That is very true. But thank you so much for that incredibly generous super chat. But I want to bring up your next comment that you brought up here because I love dumping on Kadish a little bit. P.S. Lee Child must give Kadish the cold shoulder in Hollywood because those books are awesome. All right. The second episode, real quick, I have the synopsis up here. It says, Reacher tells Roscoe that when he and Hubble were placed in prison during the first episode, when they were jumped by members of the prison Aryan Nation Welcome Committee, he assumed they wanted to kill him. However, Hubble was the real target, and we now have a third murder, Police Chief Morrison. Now, Paul Hubble is missing, and Reacher thinks he is deceased. They gather up Mrs. Hubble and their kids, and she goes into protective custody under Oscar's friend's FBI agent Picard's care. Let's talk about the assassination of the Sheriff Morrison in this episode. That was freaking gruesome, incredibly gruesome. So, in the previous episode, Hubble says something very specific about who the people he's working for threatened him, and he said they threatened to pin me to a wall and kill me. And that was like that was like the little clue that they kind of dropped in the first episode. And then in this episode, that's exactly how Sheriff Morrison was murdered in his own home. He was pinned to the wall with stakes, and then his wife was killed, and it was a very, very gruesome scene. I'm glad that they didn't shy away from that, and Guillermo's little bit in there, like, oh my God, where's his balls? And it was a perfect mix of like, oh my God, I can't believe they put that on screen, and also a really funny little moment to punctuate it with. The investigation is moving forward. I really enjoyed this episode as well. I don't have a lot of salt for it. It was a very, like, I was kind of hooked from the first episode, and then going into this one, the stakes are even higher now because now we've got like officials getting brutally pinned against a wall and stuff like that, and there's like this whole mystery going on about who did it and who was Hubble working for, what could be causing this. So it kind of, again, the show is just kind of like a roller coaster of like kind of slow for a little bit, some exposition stuff, and then boom, it hits you in the face with a big moment. Tom, what did you think about the second episode and that brutal murder scene?
I think because like I said, I'm going to reference mostly from the movies because I did like them. I do like most Tom Cruise movies. Just I don't know if that's fortunately or unfortunately, but I genuinely like a Tom Cruise movie. And what I liked about the Jack Reacher movies is they would flash between like ultra violence and sleuthing. And the show, it jumps off right away with, okay, it's gonna be ultra violent and it's gonna be sleuthy. So yeah, I think between episode 1 and 2, it really was picking up, its character. It said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to be. This is what you can expect from the show. It's going to be shocking. It's going to be interesting. It's going to have flecks of humor. And they're going to do their best to give you the best whodunit they can. And I think that the episode 2 puts it on that trail.
All right, cool. Kadish, what about you, bud?
So one of my big pet peeves while reading the book was that Reacher basically becomes part of the investigation after like his alibi clears him. So like he shows up at these crime scenes, he's like, doing police work, and no cop in their right mind would ever let someone, especially someone who used to be accused of the crime, participate in the investigation.
Wouldn't you love to do that?
But in the book, yeah, I mean, in the book, Lee Child's taken Tom's cues where he's just like, oh, I'd like to be involved in that investigation, so Jack Reacher would be involved. At least in the show, like they kind of made it a point to be like, Finley didn't like the fact that he was injecting himself into the investigation, but he kind of realized he couldn't stop him. It's a small police force, and eventually they have to work with Reacher on the down low because they realize that there's corruption in the police department. That murder did happen that way in the book. So like I said, like all the big plot points of the investigation in the show are taken directly from the books, at least up until I think episode 6, in which they start throwing some curveballs at you. Overall, it was a solid second episode. Like, Jack Reacher is basically perfect in every way. He picks up on all the clues, tells you everything you need to know. So yeah, that was fine.
Carlson says, I don't think Tom Cruise has been in a shitty movie, has he?
Yeah.
What was that, Alex?
The Mummy, Tom.
Oh yeah, the Mummy.
No, the Mummy's good. Days of Thunder is terrible. Born on the 4th of July is unwatchable. Cocktail is terrible. That's about it.
Okay. I will say throughout this entire series of Reacher, they play real fast and loose with like how law enforcement works and like who's allowed on crime.
Welcome to Lee Childs.
Yeah. It's kind of a running joke to me. Like I'm watching this, I'm like, he would not be able to get away with that. But I mean, I get they try to justify it in the show because, like Kadish said, it's like who's going to stop him? There's only like 4 police in the entire town, and he's like 4 times the size of all of them.
But so he's not even like a PI, is he?
No, he's a former military policeman who has an investigative like resume. So that's kind of like their justification for like, well, he used to be a cop. He's kind of like an off-duty cop or retired cop.
He won every medal known to man. I
mean, look at him.
Like he can't be anything but a Gary Stu in every way, shape, or form. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, there's some disagreements with you in the chat there, Tom.
Yeah, well, everybody has an opinion, don't they?
Well, it's the internet, buddy. All right, episode 3 is called Spoonful. The episode establishes Roscoe as an innovative, rugged, and driven police officer recruited by the FBI and CIA because, as Reacher puts it, she lacks interpersonal skills. His kind of woman. Another woman who is a Reacher type is Special Agent Molly Beth, who works for the Secret Service. She is returning Officer Roscoe's call to follow up on Joe. Reacher breaks the news that that Joe is dead. It becomes clear to him that she had a personal relationship with Joe, his brother. She tells them that Joe was the director of the Office of Investigations and was overseeing an anti-counterfeiting operation. This episode was, I mean, it had a couple action scenes. I think this is the one where that group of thugs come after him in the parking lot and are paid off by like a local townsperson to get him out of there. But more or less, this is just kind of like a development episode. A lot happens story-wise, but not so much like action. But they reach out to this Secret Service lady who has information on Joe's investigation that he was on, and what caused his murder was he kind of found out too much, and he ended up being killed by the people he was investigating. And the only person who has information on this is this agent Molly Beth Gordon. What did you guys think about this episode?
Dumb.
Fine.
And I'll tell you why.
It's an episode. I think I fiddled on my phone for most of it.
So the whole thing with Molly Beth, the love interest for Reacher's brother, who's also at the Secret Service or whatever, the entire concept that Reacher's like, you have to hand deliver those files from my brother to me.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust FedEx or anything. It was so stupid. It's like, the minute that he said, come out and get me, I was like, she's dead.
Yeah.
They're going to kill her. And so to me, like if Reacher was really supposed to be smart, he'd have been like, I'm coming to you and I'm going to get those papers. Right. Instead of having her come to them and put her in danger, his brother's lover, partner, or like whatever.
Yeah.
So to me, that was like a real misstep in the narrative. Another thing is the FBI agent Picard, who basically takes care of Lana Lang. Yeah.
Lana Lang.
Yeah, from Smallville.
From Smallville,
yeah. So every time he shows up on screen, in my head, I'm replacing him with Patrick Stewart. Because his name's Picard.
Oh, because his name's Picard.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I got a kick every time he was on screen because I was just picturing Captain Picard taking care of that role.
Super chat from Backyard TARDIS. Thank you so much. Says, yay, Conspiracy Tom. He did one podcast on conspiracies and then disappeared. Coincidence? I think not. blink SOS if you need help, Tom. Thank you for that. Backyard Nick, my friend Nick, thank you so much. Okay, so yeah, this whole plot line of like, you have to come to us with the paperwork because we don't trust technology for you to like email it to us because it's insecure or something like that. Very strange, very kind of stretching reality a little bit there. They tried to justify it, but like Kadish pointed out, it doesn't jive. You can fax something, you can email something, just as more than secure enough to then justifying somebody flying across the country to go drop it to your desk by hand. It doesn't make any sense.
Or she could have like read the files and just called them up and said, "Hey, here's what's in them."
You just dictate them to them, like over the phone.
Yeah, like take a picture of them with her phone and text it to them or something.
Tom, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, since we're getting into it, he's super anti-technology. He's super anti-establishment, which speaks to me. I get it. But what does that come from? Matt, do you have any insight onto why he's so anti-tech, anti-this, anti-that?
So the whole thing about Reacher is that he's a man who lives outside of society. He is completely off the grid. He doesn't even own clothing. Like when instead of washing his clothes, he throws them away and buys new clothes. So like his whole thing is just that he is kind of like the rugged individualist to the extreme. And that's part of his charm, is that like he is beholden to nothing. And that's just kind of how he is. He, after he did his service, he basically said like, you know what, I just want to wander the earth like Caine in Kung Fu, and I don't want to have any attachments. And I think there's a certain appeal to that, but to like for a male escapist fantasy, it's like, yeah, we'd love to not pay taxes and just kind of like buy new clothing instead of having to do laundry and walk around and get into adventures and stuff.
Oh, he did make a comment too during that one time. He's like, "I'm going to find out who killed my brother because it takes time, and I have an abundance of time on my hands." And he says he's like, "I'm not a vagrant. I'm a hobo." He's like, he's just this wandering guy who doesn't have a home.
One of the things that kind of always bugged me about The Killing Floor, and to a certain extent the series, is that Reacher just kind of like happens to come to Margrave because his brother mentioned like some blues singer. And he's like, "Oh, I want to go see where this blues singer played." And it was just like so random. Like it felt very contrived to me.
It's in the details, Matt. It's in the details.
Yeah, because in this
show,
apostrophe.
Remember the apostrophe? It changed the whole course of the show. The entire investigation changed.
In this show, he specifically brings that up, and he says maybe he sent me that message on purpose. Like it was a secret message. Like he was in trouble and he needed his brother's help. So how does he do it? He mentions this jazz player from this small town.
They tried to make Lee Child's writing less terrible by doing that. I don't know if they succeeded. I would rather they just like changed it to be like he was, he went there because he got a postcard from his brother or something.
Well, that's kind of what they did. It's just not a physical item. It was just like a mention of something like, oh, okay, it turned out to be a secret message, but I see what you're saying.
So the one bad Tom Cruise movie, Night and Day, with Cameron Diaz.
Cameron Diaz?
Yeah. Terrible movie.
I don't even remember that movie, so I'm going to agree with you.
I don't remember enough of it to argue with you, but anyway. All right, episode 4. Episode title is In a Tree. After killing 2 hitmen, who are later to be found out to be Venezuelan special forces, Reacher found another suspect deceased in the trunk of their car. Spivey, the correction officer who arranged for Reacher to be killed in prison. Oh, and more importantly, Reacher and Roscoe spent a night of alternative lovemaking before heading... Alternative? Is that what... Yeah, it does say
alternative lovemaking?
That's what it says. I don't know. I'm just reading the synopsis.
Wow. I did not get that.
Which holes did they use?
I don't know. I'm going to go with whatever this website said the synopsis is. Before heading out the next morning to question Joblin's ex-wife, which is one of the victims of the first murder. His name was Joblins. He was a truck driver for Kleiner Industries.
Kleiner.
She tells them she suspected he was involved in illegal activity because he was a truck driver and paid off their house, his parents' house, and bought a lot of expensive toys. Yet things are looking up. Molly Beth is arriving at the train station, and with hard copies of those files they really freaking needed in person that Joe was working on.
They can't even meet her at the terminal. They're like, "We're going to stay up here.
I got the book.
Throw it up to me." We're up here. When she comes, they lose track of her because they're not at the terminal to meet her. Reacher finds her down the train station tracks for some reason, bleeding out from a wound. When she passes away in Reacher's arms, and the files are missing. So that whole subplot was just completely pointless. Like they brought her there, and then she just died, and then they didn't get the files anyway. So all of it was completely meaningless.
They never got those files, right?
I know.
Like those things just were gone.
Just gone.
For good.
Yeah, that
So,
whole
like,
scene is weird. Yeah, I
it's
did not
very
like
strange.
it.
yeah, she comes
messy.
off the subway and she like waves at them. Then
Yeah.
she's like, "I'm going to
Under
the
him."
escalator."
No,
And then like she just
don't forget.
disappears.
Don't forget, they have no idea who each other are.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he's like, don't worry, I'm a big ass dude. She's gonna be like, oh, it's that big ass dude over there.
I look just like my brother, and then like they show his brother in a flashback, and,
And it doesn't look anything
I don't
like him.
really like him.
That was,
But remember, like when she picks
Oh,
up the
God.
phone and she thinks that it's him because
Yeah, you sound
apparently they
just
have
like
the same
him.
voice,
I-
and then
I
in the
can-
flashback they don't sound like each other.
Yeah,
No.
I could believe that two brothers sound similar, but they definitely don't in the show. But that whole scene, this whole part of the show where they meet this lady, and they're on this balcony and they're looking down at her, and she does the most uncovert special service thing ever and waves at them with a giant briefcase of extremely important paperwork. And then she goes underneath the little overpass, and then she just disappears. And they find her like a mile down the track, like dying. It didn't make any sense. It was very stupid.
Was this the episode where they returned to Roscoe's house to find that like she was targeted, or was this the one where they go to the motel?
I think they went to the motel because they found out Roscoe's house wasn't safe anymore.
Well, no, they went to the motel because the road was closed when they went to the bar because Reacher wanted a beer. And so like they spent the night together, but it was like Reacher slept on the floor and Roscoe was in the bed, and they were kind of like, doing like the intimate talk, but like they didn't really have sex, So
oh my gosh, I almost missed this super chat from Jude. Thank you, Jude. Do not besmirch the good name of Tom Cruise. We'll do what we want, Jude. Thanks for the $2.99 though. I'll pay, or $1.99. I'll pay you back tomorrow. Yeah, I don't know if those are two different instances. So I think this is the one where Roscoe gives Reacher her family gun, which is like a freaking Desert Eagle 50 caliber.
Well, they did that once they found out that her house was broken into by the same people who killed the police chief.
Right.
And so like if they hadn't, had to stay the night in the motel, they'd have been presumably murdered just like the police chief was, very brutally.
Right. Yeah.
So I can't remember if that was this episode or the one before it.
It blurs together to me.
Yeah,
it blurs together.
The one thing I did really like about this episode, and of course it has to do with the action, but when these Venezuelan special forces agents are following Reacher, and he kind of like tricks them, and he rolls his car forward, hops out, hides in the bushes, and waits for them to pass. He does something that I love it when action stars and action movies do this, is it's no nonsense. I'm not going to wait until I'm getting fired at to shoot back. He just takes them out, like from behind. And there's another movie that does it's Taken with Liam Neeson, when he goes to that like slave auction house and he just murders everybody inside of it. It's the same type of thing where it's like I'm not gonna put myself at a disadvantage and allow them to have like an upper hand or allow them to get aware of my presence. He just kills them, and I'm like, thank you.
I do think it's funny, like how many people Reacher murders, like straight up murders throughout the series.
A lot.
And Finley's just like, oh, you killed another guy, okay. And
No, I think my favorite was he was like, what'd you do last night? He's like, oh, I murdered 5 people at that house, and they're all like, cool, man. right on.
Yeah, like
let's get breakfast.
At the start of the show, like Reacher's very like insulted that people think that he's been accused of murder, and then like the entire series he's just murdering people. Yeah, just straight up murder. And
it's cool, like totally cool murder, like no problem. Oh, how many people did you kill? 5, 6 yesterday, and they're like, right on, man.
I told you they play real fast and loose with law enforcement in this show.
So I'll say this: in the books, the Venezuelans weren't a thing. Like Kleiner was shipping the counterfeit bills to Venezuela, but there were no Venezuelan special forces in the books. Okay. It was all Kleiner's men who were like kind of like taking on Reacher. Okay. So the addition of like these South American special forces in the show, I thought was a good addition. I thought it added something to it.
I like it. Well, plus
So
it takes you off the scent, right? Like it kind of misdirects you from where they did a few really good instances of misdirection throughout the series. I mean, I watched it all in 2 days, so it all kind of goes by pretty smooth. But there is a lot of misdirection, a lot of it is a whodunit after all, and they do have a lot of kind of whodunit along the way, and the Venezuelans were like a good, were like a red herring, throw out there and say, oh,
well, they were
look what's going on here.
kind of used as like enforcers for Kleiner Industries in the show. Like
Mm-hmm.
they weren't the main villains, but they were like his paid hired help. Basically, they were the goons that he hired. I got to
Well,
address the chat real quick. Roscoe is the police deputy that's working in this small town who's head over
she's the
heels.
girl.
Yeah, head over heels for her full name is Roscoe
Conklin.
Conklin.
Wait,
Roscoe Conklin.
Roscoe was her first name?
Roscoe is her first name, yeah.
Ooh.
And apparently her family is very big in Margrave. Like they founded the city, and then the Kleiners took it over from them or something like that. And so she's very bitter.
Yeah. Well, Kleiner Industries is that typical, like I was talking about before we started recording this, was it's like the old Western town. The big railroad tycoon guy comes in and saves the town from being poor, but he's doing some real shady stuff on the side to make it all happen. It's a very classic Western kind of story.
And in the show, there's this barber named Mosley who kind of helps out Reacher and stuff for no good reason. But he owns this barber shop in town.
Kindly. He's kindly.
And he gives Reacher a bunch of like backstory and exposition. But in the books, there was actually two barbers. They were brothers, and I guess they just combined those two characters for the show. Rightly so, I guess.
Were they arguing about who the greatest boxer was of all time? And it wasn't Rocky Marciano? It's Rocky Marciano.
Alex
isn't going to get that joke because he's never watched Coming to America. He's
watched
I did. I saw it, but I just didn't care for it.
Not the second one.
No, I watched them both, but whatever. It is.
Ooh.
All right. Episode 5, no apologies. Reacher and his loyal former co-worker, Neagley, I think her name is, head up to Arkansas to investigate the death of an EPA agent, someone named the Viking. Was hired to kill them after investigating the dumping of chemicals into a local river. As they are chauffeured around town by the local PD, again, another thing that doesn't happen, one of the officers driving pulls his gun out and shoots his partner in the head as Reacher and Neagley watch in horror. The cruiser crashes off the road and into the water below, passing a bridge over a river on the way down. At the same time, while the bad officer drowns, and they escape, Finley breaks into Kleiner Industries to go through the owner's files. Except when he enters the office, they find that man is sitting at his desk with his throat cut. So lots of twists and turns in this episode. The murder of the police officer while driving.
That was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen.
Very dumb. Also, like I think it was just made for like that gut reaction for people, for the audience. But the dumber thing that happens is when they're in the water, the guy's like stuck in the driver's seat. And he's like, "Help me!" And Reacher convinces him to allow himself to die because if he lives, his life would be even worse.
Well, I mean that's the Gary Stu, right?
In the middle of them sinking in a car, he's like, "Hey, bro. Just leave your seatbelt on and stay put. You're not going to want to survive."
No, Reacher is so logical and convincing that the guy just chooses to die.
He just chooses death.
It's like you know what? I can't escape this.
You're right.
Yeah.
Oh my god, dude! It was so goofy. But
even worse is that he chooses while he's driving to pull a gun on his partner.
Yeah.
And it's just like you could have literally shot all three of these people as they were getting into your car.
Yeah.
And they would have been able to do anything about it. It was just like, it was very contrived. It was a very contrived situation. But the end of this episode where Finley discovers Kleiner with his throat cut, that took me by surprise because that was not in the books.
Okay.
Kleiner is the bad guy to the very end in the books. And so when they showed Kleiner was dead, I was like, ooh, curveball. So it was a good ending to this episode, I thought.
My wife is in the chat right now, just sabotaging the rest of my night. Yeah, I will agree that was a curveball I did not see coming. Because I said, I saw this as like a classic Western plot line where the big tycoon is doing some shady stuff, and Clint Eastwood has to come in and clean up the town type of situation. And when that dude died, I was like, oh, okay, so now what? Like, I was very put off. I didn't know what was going on, but that whole death situation with the cops was just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Finley had some good scenes with Kleiner leading up to that revelation as well. Like,
should we talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a scene where he's like, "You're not my daddy."
Yeah, this is that was a great moment. That was a great moment. So Finley is confronting Kleiner about some of the investigation he's doing. He's like, I have one of your workers who's part of this investigation, and he apparently, you paid for his legal support during some kind of an altercation. Like, what's your relationship with him? Why are you protecting him? And he starts prodding, and Kleiner doesn't take well to that. He gets a little offended and gets kind of pissy with the guy. And he's like, why don't you just stick to your investigation the way you're told to do it and leave this alone because it's not worth your time. And Finley, who's like this very by the book, don't swear, don't say anything rude to people, like play it by the rules, goes, my father's name was frickin' whatever, Finley. You must think you're everybody's daddy in this town, but you're not my daddy.
My daddy's name was Augustus Finley Jr., the third Esquire.
It was such a funny moment. But what really
I'm going to take my fucking foot and break it off in your fucking ass.
Yes.
Well, the thing that bothered me about that, though, is that leading up to this, so Finley has this thing about cursing. He says, cursing is the crutch for the weak mind. And as they're leaving, Reacher starts giving him crap about like breaking his rule.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of cheapened the character a little bit too much too early on, because Finley does eventually come around to seeing the frontier justice that Reacher dishes out as being the only way that they can actually get justice for this case. But I always felt like he's kind of compromised himself a little bit too early in the show. For my liking.
What are we in, episode 5? So we're more than halfway through.
Well, but that happened before this episode. That happened,
okay.
I think episode 3 or 4 or something like that.
Okay. All right, episode 6, Papier, I think it said. This episode examines a piece of paper Reacher found in Joe's belongings. They contact a professor who has quite the story to tell. She was one of 2 academics studying the effects of MUC, mass undetectable counterfeiting, and that 80% of existing U.S. currency is in $100 bills. Because the U.S. has the most stable currency on the planet, Joe thought that fake U.S. currency was being shipped into Georgia. However, Reacher had it wrong. The money was being made in Georgia, not being imported from overseas. The shipping lanes have been closed recently by the Coast Guard, and the Venezuelans want their money. How are they doing it? Taking single dollar bills, chemically altering them to get rid of the ink, and then reprinting them as $100 bills. This, I was kind of like, okay, I guess I'm along for the ride with this story because I'm enjoying it for the most part. But this whole like washing the ink off of the dollar bills and then reprinting it with $100, it doesn't jive. I don't think that's how counterfeiting works, and I didn't buy it for a second. What did you guys think about this?
So in the books, there's an entire chapter where Reacher tracks down this counterfeiting expert and gets all this information. And it's basically Lee Childs is like, I did all this research on counterfeiting. Here it is in this one chapter. The exposition dump in that chapter was insultingly bad when I was reading it. So I was kind of glad to see that they fixed it a bit in the show, where it wasn't as like, oh, here's all my research I did on counterfeiting that a character regurgitates for you.
Yeah.
In terms of like I mean, feasibly, yeah, I could see that working because the paper is the most important part of the currency, and so like if they just wash the ink off and put it on, it makes sense. I mean, like I don't think it's believable, but within the setup that they put into the show, I bought it, so I didn't have a problem with it.
Tom, what about you? Did you buy this?
Yeah, no, I liked it good enough.
Okay.
We needed an explanation for how it was getting done. They gave it to us, and I said fine. It was fine, good enough, good enough.
All right.
Yeah. But I just wanted to. Yeah, we'll leave it there. It's technically, is it possible? Probably not. Is it movie plausible? For sure.
Okay. We're operating in two different worlds. See, like
Well,
every
yeah, there's a cinematic
this
universe, and then there's the real universe. And like you said, the cop wouldn't shoot the other cop while driving; they would do it like in the back of the head while they were getting in. Cinematically, it makes sense to here's enough information to make it seem plausible. Roll with it.
Okay.
Well, also one of the weird things was that the accountant that they got at the beginning to help them like literally launder this money. What was weird was that like they needed a bunch of like dollar bills, like single dollar bills that they would then clean all the ink off of and then reprint as $100 bills, right? And they would do them like as older, $100 bills so that they didn't have any of like the fancy magnetic strips and stuff like that. But the thing that gets me is like, why do you need an accountant to get like a bunch of singles? It's like you literally could just like withdraw those from any bank anywhere and nobody would bat an eye as long as it's under like $9,000 or something like that.
It's just like movie magic, my man. No one knows what accounting is. No one knows what chemicals are. So you just throw enough buzzwords at morons, and it's like, oh, okay.
I could understand if they needed to account for where all the hundreds came from, but it didn't seem to me like they needed him for the singles. And so like it was just a very strange. Like they never really explained it very well. They kind of gave you just enough to fill in the gaps.
Yeah, just enough.
Did we already cover the part where they met at the chicken shack and like came up with their game plan to take down the corrupt society?
Yeah, I was so upset about that whole scene. Can I complain about that?
Like
they order all this food, they eat anything.
No, they had like 2 bites.
No. Because I watched this multiple times because I love that scene because the back and forth between Reacher and Finley was great. Reacher said he gets up and he's like, I'm going to go right now. And he's got a mouthful of chicken. He stops and he says, I'm packing this to go. And then he
fed the ribs to the stupid dog.
There's a whole dog plot line that we're not even talking about in this freaking thing.
The nonsensical dog plot line.
The weird thing about Jolene's is like Reacher says, meet me at Jolene's. And like at no point does he mention like, oh, I heard about this great restaurant called Jolene's. I can't wait to try it out. But I wanted to touch on something you said, Alex, which is like, so in this scene, Finley gets a salad and Reacher's like, I was embarrassed just ordering that for you. And so like they have this kind of back and forth, but I feel like this is a perfect example of how poor of an actor Alan Ritchson is compared to someone like Malcolm Goodwin, because like as he's like kind of like ribbing Finley, Reacher just comes off almost like he's reading lines. Like I thought he was very stiff in the scene. And Goodwin is just kind of like running circles around him and how he's like delivering his lines and interacting with Richson. So I feel like every time they get into a banter situation, Alan Ritchson's kind of deficiencies as an actor really kind of come to the forefront, and that's what I noticed every time they had those little back and forths.
I can understand where you're coming from, but I gotta disagree. I think that was very much on purpose. I think that dry sense of humor worked well with this. I mean, it's kind of like when you're watching.
He's clunky. He's clunky.
When you're watching a Keanu Reeves movie, Keanu Reeves is not a good actor, but he plays.
No, he is not.
He plays characters that he can just kind of like be natural into, and that's kind of what I saw this as. Like he's supposed to be that like very socially awkward, doesn't really know what to say, but he's kind of snarky at the same time. I bought it. I enjoyed it. I thought he was fine. I thought it played more to the character. I'd have to watch him in something else. This is the first show I've ever seen him in, so I don't have anything to kind of compare it to. So maybe if he plays in it, I'll go check out one of his other shows and see if he can act a little bit different. But
he's the bad guy in Blue Mountain State.
Okay, I never heard of that.
Also, like if you look at the Tom Cruise movie, where he was in situations where he was kind of like in verbal sparring with another character. It played very differently. I like Tom Cruise's portrayal of Jack Reacher more than this portrayal. I know that's sacrilege to a lot of people who are fans of the show. But I felt like because Tom Cruise wasn't as physically imposing, like he came off as like more believable in how he would like use his brains to outwit people and stuff like that. Whereas with Alan Ritchson, like the guy is just like a Hulk, like nothing can like stop this guy physically. And so like, because he's so big, like his intellect doesn't seem organic to his character. And I don't mean to like, stereotype
what's the matter? Big dudes can't be smart.
Exactly. I don't mean to imply that, but it just feels like Alan Ritchson is playing the character in a way that doesn't feel congruent. And I don't know, that might just be a me thing, but
is Blue Mountain State like a big show? I've never even heard of it. I'm gonna have to find out where it is and go watch it. Like everybody in the chat knows what it is.
It's on Netflix. Okay. Yeah, it's on Netflix.
All right, let's break down the last.
I recognize him as Dove from Titans.
Okay. So. Another reference I don't understand. I'm going to break down the last 2 episodes because it's kind of like it ties together as the big finale, and we only have about 5 minutes left. So Mayor Teal fires Oscar after Officer Stevenson is killed. He tells Reacher to leave town. There is only one officer left, which means they are the mole. He sets up the whole the white latex kill squad to kill Reacher at the Hubble home. Reacher kills every single last one of them and has an epic fight in the rain to boot. Reacher then takes a shower and cleans up the house
and has unconventional sex.
And heads over to Picard's safe house to meet Roscoe and the Hubble family. He finds Oscar surrounded by Agent Picard, KG, which is Kleiner's son, and Mayor Teal with their guns drawn. It turns out the whole frickin' town is corrupt. Picard's former and now deceased partner was the Viking. KJ admits to Reacher that he killed his own father, not the hitman from overseas. He tells Reacher that they are taking Oscar and he needs to track down Paul Hubble. He is still alive, to the surprise of everybody. If he returns them, he will let Charlie and the girls go. I don't believe him for a second. When Reacher finds Hubble, he gathers Neagley, breaks free Oscar, who was being held hostage at the police station, and they plan an attack on the warehouse where Roscoe and Charlie and the children are being held. They raid the property, killing KJ, Mayor Teal, and burning all the money in the process. Reacher leaves Mulgrave and says goodbye to his brother by burying his grandfather's military medal near the underpass. I don't care about the big episode where they kind of like unravel the entire mystery, and it turns out that like literally everybody in the town is bad and they're all corrupt. It was kind of just like, okay, at that point in time you kind of knew, like, you kind of put the pieces together by that episode. But I enjoyed the absolute crap out of the big finale at the warehouse. I had a ton of fun. It felt so classic 90s action hero stuff, like just going in guns blazing. I could have sworn there was
he goes full Schwarzenegger commando at that.
Yeah. He's got the paint and everything. I mean, I could have sworn Jean-Claude Van Damme was in that episode somewhere. It was just a ton of fun. I just had fun with it, man. Like at this point, I was kind of like, okay, I'll let go of all the silly stuff from the previous episodes. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Oscar's little arc in this one where he finally takes his shirt off, takes his tweed suit off, and gets going and grabs the gun and goes to town. Like, it was just fun. It was a fun episode.
He's like Finley, you got some muscle underneath that tweed jacket. He's like, really? He's like, no. So real quick, Alan Ritchson, like we talked about how Lana Lang is in this series.
Yeah.
So Alan Ritchson was actually Aquaman in Smallville.
That was him?
That was him, yeah.
Oh my gosh, he has filled out.
Yeah. He was also Raphael in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles live action movie.
Yeah, somebody made a comment about that earlier in
the Michael Bay one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Michael Bay one, yeah. Yeah, okay. Well, how about this? Which one was more surprising? That the son killed the father, or that Picard was the bad guy the whole time?
Picard surprised me more. The son had like real creeper vibes this entire show. Like he shows up every once in a while and just gets real weird with Roscoe, and he has those eyes. You know what I mean? Like he's got that look. Like he's done
the snake eyes. You get the snake eyes.
Yeah, very much so. They did well with the casting on that. I was not expecting the FBI agent to be corrupt either. That seemed a little bit of a stretch to me because like what in the world does this guy have to do with this? Like they called him.
I called it from the beginning.
Did you really?
I called it. I did because it's one of the very first things he says, which is a trope in every stupid whodunit.
Shouldn't have taken the job.
Goes, you never should. I told you never should have taken that job. And you're like, oh, that's coming back later. Like, I thought we were friends. I was your friend. I told you don't take the job.
Yeah, okay. In the book, like you can see it coming a mile away that this guy is a double agent type thing. So like that's another example of like the show trying to fix a problem that was in the book and make it surprising. I actually so in the book, KJ, the son of Kleiner, he is basically the guy that Reacher kills at the mansion. They added a new character just to have KJ become like the big bad. In the book, it's actually Reacher versus Kleiner in the warehouse, and he killed his son beforehand. But they kind of like mixed things up and threw a couple curveballs. I actually think that the show did it better than the book did.
Okay. I do want to mention real quick that fight scene at the Hubble home, I had a lot of fun with that. That was really cool. The ending, how it ended was really fun too. It was like it was raining. They threw him in the pool, and you thought for a minute there, I thought freaking Reacher was gonna lose. Well, I didn't think he was gonna lose, but I was like watching him, like, dang, he's getting the crap beat out of him. Like he was not winning that fight.
It's very un-Reacher, especially considering that he was fighting a guy who was like half his size.
Yeah. Well, he's wiry. It's harder.
He was a meth head with a crowbar. Good luck. That's all I would say.
No, but I did like that they made him at least that vulnerable at that point. Like he was losing that fight up until the last minute. He finally freaking pulled something out of his ass.
What was so when you did the recap of the first episode, not the first episode, but the second to last episode,
the
penultimate episode. You mentioned something, I can't remember what. Can you repeat the synopsis for that real quick?
Yeah, Mayor Teal fires Oscar after Officer Stevenson, which is he's kind of been like this. He gets brutally murdered.
So the deputy who was actually working for the bad guys, there's a scene where Reacher takes him out to dinner, and he's like, "You're the only guy I can trust." And then he tells him about his plan because he knows that this is the guy who's working for the bad guys.
Right.
And so like he sets up the trap to bring like the hit squad to him so he can kill them all. And the entire time I'm watching that, I'm like, how stupid is this deputy who thinks that like this is all legit?
Yeah.
When he's literally the only deputy who's still alive other than Roscoe.
Right. Oh, I've got him now. He's gonna spill the beans, and I'm gonna catch him.
Don't forget the mayor that made himself chief of police
with his stupid crystal cane.
Yeah,
like that is the most bad guy thing I've ever seen. Like, I've got my crystal cane.
I really wanted him to go full Colonel Sanders. But Bruce McGill, he was an old MacGyver holdover, so it was fun seeing him.
No, but you are right though. That scene was kind of funny where he's feeding information to this guy who is just completely oblivious that he's being played. But it was, you know what though, Kadish, he was a racist, so automatically the show's like, he's a freaking complete idiot. Just make him a complete idiot from the start to finish, and then have him die at the end. That's what he deserves. So immediately, throughout this entire show, they keep taking shots at the detective because he's a black guy in Georgia. He doesn't belong there. He's from Boston. It's all that's kind of like a running theme throughout the rest of this show, and it finally kind of comes to a head at this point where like the one bad dude, the mole of the operation, gets his comeuppance.
I actually felt like the final shootout wasn't all that good.
No.
Oh, that was fine. It was fine.
Yeah. All the CG fire and all that stuff. It just, I don't know. It didn't work for me.
Oh, the CG fire was rough. I'll give you that. But I thought it was fun.
It felt believable. And I think with all of the action and violence throughout the whole thing, it wanted to seem like believable action. And it came off that way. It wasn't John Wick. It wasn't like insane over the top. But it was more raw. And I dug it. I thought the end was good. I thought the ending action was good. I think it tied things up pretty nicely. I'm not going to hate on the action. It was the action's the best part of the show.
You know what though? Like I kept comparing.
And the poop on it sounds. I don't know.
I kept comparing it to the final shootout in the Jack Reacher movie in the quarry, and that was a damn good action scene.
Yeah.
So like I know it's a TV show, but it kind of paled in comparison.
The one I did like that they actually had something for Hubble to do. So Hubble, he's like, I'm not a fighter. I don't know how to use guns. He's a freaking accountant, for Christ's sake. and they're like, "Hey, look, just go and get your kids and get them out of there. Like that's your only job." And he did exactly that. He didn't get like sidetracked and have some freaking sappy moment with his wife and end up getting himself killed or something. He went, he got his kids, he saw his wife tied up to a pole and was like, "Sorry, I got a job to do," and then just like left. So I appreciated that. I was like, okay, good. At least they gave him something to do, and he did it, and it wasn't like this big drawn out like, "Oh, but my wife is down there."
I just think it would have been better if that guy who played Hubble was Tom Welling. So.
Tom Welling.
Yeah,
from Smallville?
Smallville. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Everybody in the show is from Smallville.
That would have been great.
It's some weird recasting.
See Allison Mack show up.
It'll be season 2. Watch Tom Welling will show up in season 2. All right, so that's it for the show. Final thoughts, Tom. Did you enjoy this show, or is it just not up to par? What do you think?
I was expecting a little bit more Sherlock Holmes out of it, and a little less the guy from Blue Mountain State solving crimes. So maybe that's writing. Maybe Kadish is right. He's just not up to it. I think his brawn overweighed his brains big time. But it's the first season. I thought it was entertaining enough to watch the second season, see how it goes. It'll be a whole new cast except for Reacher, so it'll be interesting enough. Mm-hmm. And it's good enough. I thought I'd had really low expectations going into it. The action got me through the whole thing. The action was good. I liked the Roadhouse vibe that it had the whole time. You know, it was like this guy's coming in to clean up the town. Yeah. And okay, I dig it. He's fighting, the townies, and okay, I was. It's good enough for me. Okay. It's good enough for me. I'll watch the season 2. Was it great? No. Will I be telling people, "Oh, did you see Reacher? Oh, you need to see Reacher"? I'm not doing that. This isn't League of Legends Arcane, where I'm telling every single person I know to watch a cartoon. It's a little different, but I think it did enough, and I think I'd like to see where they go. I think they did enough for me. Yeah, they did enough. Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty much in agreement with you. I enjoyed it. I think the character of Reacher, for me, carried this whole show. Like, I could have forgiven a lot because I really liked him. I liked his dry, witty humor. I liked his action scenes. He's just a freaking Hulk of a dude. I miss seeing giant freaking dudes doing badass things. You're completely right with that.
Yeah.
I miss that, and I'm glad I had it in this show. I have a strange little thing in the back of my head that I keep thinking about those. Like, so Reacher comes to this town. There's this well-to-do business tycoon who's basically carrying the entire town financially on his back with his counterfeiting and stuff like that. Reacher burns the entire place down, destroys the whole company. Both son and father are completely dead. Kleiner Industries is gone, right? And if it isn't gone, it's under investigation by the FBI. Mulgrave is dead at this point, right? Is this place just not going to become an absolute shithole after this? Like, there's no money there. There's no jobs. Kleiner Industries gone. They freaking hired everybody. Like, he's gonna bounce, right? Reacher's gonna bounce because he's a drifter. He's gonna leave, and the entire town is just gonna go straight to hell. And it made me laugh. It made me laugh when I thought about that. I'm like, oh man, I hope they don't go back here. I hope season 2 he's just like in California or something, like really far away.
Well, that's the thing about Reacher, though, right? Is like,
it's exactly what I was gonna say. That's the Reacher, right?
Yeah. He doesn't care about the fallout. He just cares about justice being done. And like in the final flashback where he basically screws his dad and his entire family over.
Yeah.
By telling that kid he got what he deserved.
Yeah.
I mean that's just Reacher to a T. He doesn't give a shit about that town. He just has this very rigid code of justice that he sticks to no matter what, and he doesn't care how many men, women, or children he has to murder in order to get there
for justice.
Yeah, for justice. He is the peacemaker, right?
Who wins in a fight, Peacemaker or Reacher?
Oh, Peacemaker. Peacemaker, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo, that's a tough one.
Just a outright brawl, fist and fist.
Man, just two, no holds barred reshot.
Yeah, just two freaking.
Overall, out of 5 stars, I'd give this series a 3-star. It was entertaining. The mystery was good. The action was good. The characters were good. It was way better than the book. I think that for season 2, they're going to be doing that Die Trying, which is the book 2 in the Reacher series. And it's where Reacher gets accidentally kidnapped, and then he has to rescue another girl who's kidnapped. And Doesn't sound like it's very good. I haven't read that book, and I probably won't.
Somebody in the chat literally just said, "I hope they don't do Die Trying. That book sucked."
Well,
here it is. Here it is.
Well, they did the first book for the first season, so I'm guessing they're going to do book 2 for the second season, which is Die Trying.
Why is that not working? Oh, there we go. Yeah, I can't wait for season 2. I just hope they don't do Die Trying. Gosso. Oh, it's funny. All right, that's it for tonight's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you all so much for being here. Really appreciated it. And thank you guys for the super chats. Gosso, you are the man, our patron from Down Under. Aaron is also here. Dark Viking, welcome, guys. And for everybody, just so you know, if you are interested in staying up a little bit later, go to saltynerdiscord.com. We're doing a live watch party of Buffy the Vampire Slayer with Jude. I think she will be there in the chat as well. So if you guys want to check it out, head over to our Discord app, sign up. It's completely free. It's public access for most part. You do get special access if you become a patron. There's a couple of chats that are exclusive for those guys, but the whole thing, more or less the whole thing is public access. So hop in. It's a great community. We love having you guys in there. And yeah, join the watch party. Come on over to the Discord app. And Kadish, you got anything to say before we head out?
Nope.
Okay. Tom, say goodbye to the people.
Goodbye, people.
Thank you for joining us. What time is it there? 1 a.m.?
Yeah, it's after 1 a.m. here. Hey, if we can go out. One of the best lines in the whole show is in the very last. He finally gets that stupid piece of peach pie, and then like, it's the best peach pie in the world. And like, how was it? He's like, I've had better.
I've had better.
It got me. It got me. That was funny. It got me.
Welcome to my life. I feel like everything.
He pulled the line from Liar Liar. I've had better.
Did you watch this amazing TV series? I've seen better.
I've seen better.
Yeah. All right, everybody. On that note, thank you all so much for joining us. Have a great night. We will catch you guys next week. And let's see what's tomorrow we're doing on Twitter, live Twitter Spaces podcast, as we always do on Tuesday mornings. And tomorrow's subject for the podcast is
how to give Matt Kadish PTSD.
Kurt Russell Westerns. You are not going to want to miss this, guys. It's going to be fantastic. All right, we'll see everybody. Adios. Stay salty.